I'm Jean Schumacher, founder of the Plant-Based Academy, where I provide help, support, guidance, and resources to switch to a plant-based lifestyle and get your health back. Today, I have the privilege of connecting with Diana Goldman, who is a Sierra Club cooking host and a plant-based nutrition and culinary educator based in Boston. She's the author of the books Plants for You and a cookbook. Her cookbook has won 2 awards, the Readable Feast's People's Choice Award and Self-Published Cookbook of the Year. So well done to you. And Diana will today be making curried sweet potato burgers and pickled red onions. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight.
Thank you so much, Jean. It's my pleasure. I really enjoyed meeting you on the Cape. I knew of your work across the internet in so many places and really admired what you did. So it's really an honor for me to be doing this with you tonight. And thank you everyone else for joining. So as Jean said, I am going to be demonstrating for you making curried sweet potato burgers as well as some pickled red onions. And then I'll put it together for you. The pickled red onions actually go on top of the sweet potato burgers with a little bit of mango chutney if you like, a little bit of cilantro if you like. And by the end of this class, you'll see it all put together. So I'm actually going to start. I love this dish because the curried sweet potato burgers are filling, they're highly flavorful, they have a wonderful texture, and they also are highly nutritious. And I'm going to be talking to you about all of those things as I move through the recipe. The first thing that I'm going to do is turn my oven on to 400 over here. That's the temperature we're going to be cooking the sweet potato burgers on. And then I'm going to start by demonstrating the pickled red onions. So you'll see that I am in this box here, but I'm also in the box with the cutting board. So this is where I'll be demonstrating the food prep. So you can look over here. So I'm going to start with the pickled red onion. I have one whole onion here, and I'm going to cut off the 2 ends. So I'll demonstrate for you how I cut this into thin half moon shape. So I'll cut off one end here, like that, flip it, and cut off the other end. Get rid of those 2. And then I turn it on its bottom. I always recommend when you're cutting, you want to create a nice flat surface. It's much safer for you so that it's not wobbling around when you're trying to cut. Now that I have a nice flat surface, I can just cut this in half down the middle. And I'm going to take the peel off. So let's take the peel off one side. And I don't think I'm going to need the other side. The recipe calls for about 1/2 of a red onion, but I'll just do it while it's here. And then again, I was talking about a nice flat surface. There we go. And I'm just going to slice down into this to make some nice thin half moon slices. You, of course, could use a mandolin for this. That would work fine. And what I would say is when you're finished, while you've got your knife out, while you've got your cutting board out, sometimes I just like to take the other onion, if I have another half left here. I'll put it in the fridge just like this, but sometimes I'll just perhaps cut it into small dice and I'll use it in a salad or I'll use it in another recipe at another time. So while I've got everything here, oftentimes I'll do that. And this calls for 1 cup of thinly sliced red onion, which is just about what I have. So 1/2 of an onion. And what I'm going to do now is put this onion into the small bowl. Now it's actually kind of a medium-sized bowl. And I've got these nice slices, put it in here, and the rest of this is really simple. To this, I'm going to add a half a cup of hot water, which I have here. I already heated up this water. So 1/2 cup of water, in it goes. And I'm also going to add some salt that I measured. I have 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and then I have 2 teaspoons of sugar here. So in they go. It's really that simple. And then I'm going to give this a stir. And I want to be sure to submerge the onions into this mixture. And then finally, I'm also going to add to this some apple cider vinegar. If you wanted to use a different kind of vinegar, that's fine. I like the flavor of the apple cider vinegar with this recipe. I actually use 6 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is it's a really quick pickle. It will be pickled in about 1 to 2 hours. You'll notice that because I'm using red onions, the liquid mixture is going to become sort of more and more pink as they get more and more pickled. So this can either sit outside your refrigerator if you're going to use them soon, or cover them and keep them in the fridge for, it'll be good for a week or so. There you go. So that's the pickled red onions. I'm just going to leave them out because I'm going to be using them later. So that's very, very simple. I love those just for adding sort of a tangy, sweet flavor to the burgers. I put them on top. They're really nice on salads. So there's something just adds a very nice sort of crunchy flavor to a number of different dishes. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is make these curried sweet potato burgers. What I love so much about these is, as I mentioned before, the texture, the flavor. I really find when people are eating plant-based or gravitating to eating more plant-based dishes, they're looking for a nice bite. They're looking for foods that are filling. They're looking for foods that are really flavorful. And that's really what I go for when I develop recipes. I'm looking to add a lot of, sweet and sour and umami rich flavors and filling qualities. And those really come from things like beans and rice and whole grains and starchy vegetables. And what I've got going on in this burger is all 3 of those things. So we have some chickpeas, we have some sweet potato, we have some rice. So all of these things make them really, really filling and delicious. And as I'm going, I'll talk to you about the specific nutritional quality of the burgers. So I'm going to start out here by adding the sweet potato, which I cooked already. And we've got a cup of sweet potato. I'm going to add this to this medium-sized bowl. I cook the sweet potato. You can microwave them. I oftentimes will do that just in a paper towel for about 6 minutes. You can also cook them in bake at 400 until they're done. I don't know, it could take, depending on the size, 30 minutes to an hour. So I cooked 1 cup before, and I just have this sweet potato without the skin. To that, I'm going to add 1 15-ounce can of chickpeas. That's the equivalent of 1.5 cup of chickpeas. So in that goes. And I also cooked ahead of time some brown rice. So I've got 1/2 cup of cooked brown rice, and that's going to go in as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take a potato masher, and I will give this a mash till it all comes together. And what I'm really looking to do is to mash up the chickpeas, because if you have big chickpeas, it's not going to hold together as a burger. So you're trying to create sort of the homogeneous burger mixture here without big chickpeas. If you've got a couple small ones, no problem, but you don't want the big ones, because the key is you really want to create a texture that's going to hold together as a burger. So I'm mashing this up. You could most definitely do this in a food processor as well. So that would absolutely work just fine. Sometimes I just like to sort of reduce the amount of appliances I'm making a mess in. And this seems sort of easy to me. Plus, I'm getting a little bit of arm exercise while I'm at it, using some elbow grease here. Okay, so this is mashed up. Give it one more go. And the next thing I want to do is add the spices. So the spices are a mixture of cumin, curry, and garam masala. And in they go. And you'll find the quantities in the Academy notes. And just I want to talk to you about curry. When I was testing my cookbook, I had more than 50 testers. which was spectacular. My site is called Beantown Kitchen, and I reached out to my newsletter list and I asked, is there anyone that's interested in testing, or do you know anyone that might like to test? I thought I'd get 1 or 2 responses. Turns out I had a really huge response and I was absolutely thrilled. But one of the things as I was working through that process, I was really on the hunt for a curry that I liked, and I must have sampled dozens of them. And my personal favorite after all that testing is the Sun brand. I mean, not only because how retro and cute is this curry tin? This is the one I like. I find some curries are bitter, and this isn't that bitter. But something I do want to say also is when you're using a curry powder, the amount of salt that is added to it varies. So I would hold off on adding salt until you have an opportunity to taste it and see. I'm also adding to this some good old onions that have been chopped already. I would say one key with the onions is chop them nice and small. If they're too big, it's going to make it difficult for your burgers to hold together. So I chop these small. Again, do it yourself or go ahead and do it in a food processor. So to this, I am adding a half a cup of finely being the important part, finely chopped onions. And I'm also adding 2/3 of a cup of finely chopped cauliflower florets. So these are nice and small. I'm always looking to add there. I'm going to put that in as well. I'll tell you about the cauliflower in a minute. And then finally, I have some finely minced garlic. So this is going to be very aromatic and very, very flavorful, and that gives us that feeling of satiation and deliciousness. So cauliflower is a cruciferous vegetable. I'll bet a lot of you have heard of them, if not all of you. Things like cauliflower, bok choy, arugula, broccoli, Napa cabbage, the list goes on, mustard greens, collard greens. And cruciferous vegetables they contain a compound called an antioxidant called sulforaphane, which may boost our health and be disease preventative, and it boosts our immune systems as well. So when I'm developing recipes, when I'm cooking, I'm always looking for ways to add these vegetables to the dishes. And so in this case, not only does the cauliflower give this a really nice nutritional boost, but it also adds a nice flavor and texture too. So I love the, cauliflower with Indian flavors. I'm giving this a mix. And then finally, once that all comes together, we've got 3 more things that we're going to add. One of them is cashews. So I have some raw cashew here. So rather than fry these, rather than add any oils, I've got some cashews that I use in order to add sort of the fatty mouthfeel that carries flavor, brings these together, also gives this a little bit of a crispiness when they bake up. So the cashews are here inside my blender, and I'm going to blend these until they become sort of like a powder. I don't want to go too far where it becomes cashew butter, but I just want to grind them up sort of into a powder. So I'll let that go. That can be done in a food processor. It can be done I've done this in a coffee grinder. And in my case, I'm using it in the dry canister of my Vitamix. So here we go. It's been ground into a fine powder. And now I can just pour that right out. And that adds a really nice flavor. Cashews are obviously nutty tasting. There's a little bit of sweetness to them. So they add a sweetness along with the sweet potato. They're going to help as a binder too. And like I said, they're a flavor carrier because of the fat component.
Do you have any substitutions for cashews? Because somebody follows Dr. Esselstyn's way of eating for heart disease, and she doesn't do nuts.
Yes. So you know what? You could leave the nuts out altogether. These are going to bind without the nuts. So that doesn't concern me. I mean, I would say potentially you could add like a breadcrumb, like a whole grain breadcrumb, if you found they weren't binding. As far as the sort of the flavor that's added, it's just a nice boost, but not necessary. So I would say it's okay without them. In the end, what you're going for is something that holds together. as a burger. You don't want to have them crumbly and falling to pieces. So last two things that I'm adding here, I have some peas. These are like a little petite pea. It doesn't need to be petite, but I think it's quite nice when it is. And I also have some cilantro. If you don't like cilantro, go ahead and leave it out. You could use parsley as well. Again, it's adding a little bit of color and it's adding a little bit of flavor. So I'm just chopping this up a little bit.
Cilantro is one of those funny spices that either you love it or you hate it.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm one of the strange people where I neither love it nor hate it. I just like it, but there aren't many like me. So I'm just going to mix this together. Basically, the idea is you're kind of folding in the peas. You don't want to smush them up. So give this a kind of a fold in. So I do have now I have a silk pat sheet here. You could use parchment paper too on a baking sheet. And what I'm now going to do, for some reason, I think the camera fell. We're not seeing the whole thing here, but you're going to get the idea. Here's the mixture, and I have a 1/3 of a cup. And that's basically the size of the burgers. And this is going to make 8 1/3 of a cup size burgers. And I'm just molding them into a burger shape. And down they go.
I remember my mom had one of those. She would make, hamburgers, and she had a hamburger press.
Oh,
And
she did. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I've heard about those. My mom didn't, but I hear someone told me there's sort of like a gadget you can use that also will sort of squeeze out the perfect burgers. So I'm just using this as a 1/3 of a cup measure, and my hands are going to get messy, but that's okay. And while I'm doing that, I am going to talk to you about actually talking about nutrition, the nutrition of these particular burgers. So as I said, it makes 8. Each one of them has 175 calories. So relatively low in calories and 2.5 milligrams of iron. And if we think that on average, we're looking about 8 milligrams of iron per day, just one burger is getting you more than a quarter of the way there. So the idea that we need to eat meat for iron is a myth. And then calcium, 48 milligrams of calcium. So again, we don't need to consume dairy to get our calcium. There's a nice source of calcium in these burgers. I'm still going here making them. And then cholesterol, there are 0 grams of cholesterol in the burgers, which isn't a surprise, as we know, because the only source of cholesterol we get in our diet comes from animal foods. Plant foods don't contain any cholesterol at all. We're humans, we produce cholesterol. The animals that we eat produce cholesterol, but plants don't produce any cholesterol. So when we're eating completely plant-based, we're not consuming cholesterol. Saturated fat, there's less than 1 gram of saturated fat. So not a lot of saturated fat compared to should we be eating these like as beef burgers. And then let's see what else I've got here. Fiber, 5 grams of fiber. So there's a nice source of fiber. Similarly, we only get fiber from eating plants. Animals don't produce fiber, and about 97% of the US population does not consume enough fiber. And wonderful thing about eating these plant-based dishes is they're rich in dietary fiber. And I would just say, so this is making more than 8. I guess I'm making them a little bit smaller than I usually do, but whatever, the more the merrier. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll make mini burgers, and I'll top them with the mango chutney, and I'll top them with the onions and a little bit of cilantro, and they make really nice appetizers. So I do that sometimes as well. So this is all set to go, and I'm putting it in the oven now. I am setting my timer here. I've got this nice old-fashioned timer. Love it. Setting it for 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, take the burgers out, give them a flip, and they go back in for 10 more minutes, because I've already made some tonight and these ones are finished. So you can see that they hold together nicely. They're a little bit sort of crispy. So what I told you about this dish, and I think I told you the nutrition, everything I'd calculated, I tell you it has 7 grams of protein. So the idea that plants, a plant-based diet doesn't offer protein sources is a myth as well. Certainly we can get enough protein from plants. So when we eat this way, the food tends to be, a plant-based diet tends to be relatively low in saturated fat, high in dietary fiber, high in antioxidants, high in phytonutrients, and relatively low in saturated fat. And all of these things are the components of a disease risk minimizing diet. So in the diseases we're talking about are things like heart disease and type 2 diabetes and certain forms of cancer, metabolic disease. So as I was saying, I've got these here now. Let me put them here so you can see them. Okay, there we go. I'll put a little bit of mango chutney on top. And I've made my own mango chutney, and sometimes I'll buy it. Certainly, if you're following Dr. Esselstyn's way of eating, you would want to make your own mango chutney and not use sugar. So they would get a little bit sort of softer. At this point, they're still a little bit on the firm side, but they're starting to get there. And then I've got a little bit of cilantro on top, and then I'll just try it. I've been looking forward to this all day, trying the burgers. Mm. Mm. So flavorful and filling. I wish you were all here to try these.
Me too.
We didn't fry them in a pan. We didn't add any oil to them because whenever we're using oil, as you know, Jean, 1 tablespoon of oil has about 125 calories. And if we're adding it to our salad dressings and we're cooking our burgers in it and all day long we're using it, those 125 calories really add up. So
Quickly.
that they do add up quickly. Yummy, so good.
And it makes me crazy when you start seeing people just drizzling oil. Oh, it's heart healthy. No, it's not on any level. So, it's great when we can just have something that is oil free. So that's amazing.
Right. And these are quite sweet because of the sweet potatoes. And like I said, go ahead and do them with half sweet potato, half yellow potato if you want. If you don't want it to be so sweet, I really like it sweet this way.
Well, what made you go plant-based? Share your story with us.
Sure. I'll share my story. So, about 11 years ago, a friend of mine said, "Oh, did you know about this going on with the animals? And did you know about that?" And I sort of covered my ears and I'm like, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And she said, "Yeah, no one ever wants to know, but these are the things you should watch." And I said, "Okay, I will. I'm not going to do it right now." But I did come around like a few weeks later to watching a documentary she recommended called Earthlings. And it was really tough to watch. I watched it in just a few minute increments, but made my way through it. And it depicted the ways in which animals are used for the food, entertainment, and clothing industry. And when I was finished, I sort of said to myself, that was really hard. I don't think I want to take part in this anymore. Now, I had studied nutritional science as an undergraduate at Cornell. My professor was T. Colin Campbell, and senior year nutritional biochemistry. For those of you who don't know him, he's sort of a plant-based nutrition giant. And I asked myself, do we need to eat animal foods to be healthy? And I circled back to what I had learned at Cornell, and then I did a little more research myself. And when I was finished, I came to learn, I was reminded that a plant-based diet may be nutritionally adequate and may even be beneficial for the prevention and treatment of disease. So I thought, okay, well, if it's causes unnecessary suffering to eat animal foods, I don't want to do it. Luckily, that night for dinner, we went out to a really amazing restaurant here in the Boston area called Oleana. And the waitress brought me a menu, asked if I had questions. And I said, "Do you have anything that's vegan, plant-based on the menu?" She said, "Yeah, we actually have quite a few things, but the chef loves to just improvise in the kitchen." I'm not sure she does that anymore, but at the time, I think she was doing that. "Can she just bring you something?" And she brought me out I was like, of course, the most gorgeous plate of a variety of different things that she had made with the fruits and vegetables, nuts and seed grains and legumes and mushrooms in the kitchen. And I thought, if this is plant-based eating, like I can do this. This is fantastic. And then after that, I guess I woke up the next day and I didn't know what to eat, but I figured it out. And I decided I was going to try a different plant-based recipe every day for a year. And I didn't quite meet that goal, but I did come close. And my husband announced that he was going to eat this way shortly after I did. So that made it really, I had a companion going down this road with me, and we were loving the food. So it was sort of, I was an insta vegan, which I know is unusual, but it happened that way. And it's been a good process.
Right? And the food is amazing.
Yeah, the food's so amazing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. And I've always loved to cook and entertain. And after changing the way I eat, I thought I can't have people over and just give them plant-based food. Like I can't, like they're going to feel the need to eat before they arrive, or they're going to leave hungry, or they're going to not like the food. But I started kind of taking a chance in doing it. I remember once I did a whole spread of like Japanese. And then at the end, I said, "Oh, Dan," to my husband, "could you please go out and get some sushi, like some fish sushi? Because I can't just give them plants." And so he obliged and he went. And a friend of mine said, "Diana, why'd you do that? Why not just plants?" He goes, "Live your principle." And after that, I was like, okay, this is important to me. I'm just going plant-based with me and anyone else I'm cooking for. And what I was finding was people were saying, "I love this food. Will you share the recipes?" And that's when I started my blog, Beantown Kitchen. "I love this food. Will you teach me how to cook?" And that's where I started a cooking business. And then it was like, "I love this food. Will you cook for me?" And next thing you know, I was doing catering. And then people were saying, like, "If you cooked for me all the time, I would eat this way all the time." And I was happy about that, but it made me sad because I couldn't cook for everybody. So I just kind of decided, I think I'm going to write a cookbook because that's the next best thing. So that was kind of the genesis of the cookbook idea. And interestingly, I had a professor way back at Cornell. I was in a food science class my senior year. I loved it so much. We were studying like the properties of food. And she saw my enthusiasm all semester, and she came up to me one day and she's like, "Diana, you should write a cookbook." So like that was always in my mind, like, wow, she told me to write a cookbook. Like that was strange. But I remembered that and I was like, I'm going to write the cookbook. So it's been amazing. I wanted to write the cookbook to just share simple recipes with people. And then I have like sections in there. Well, I mean, whatever. I could go on and on about the cookbook, but really to just be like help people in the kitchen. So you mentioned, Jean, that I just won that award. It was actually last night. I was invited to a gala and I was like, that's pretty good that a vegan cookbook won the People's Choice Award. Like I was up against Joe Nathan, Jacques Pepin, America's Test Kitchen Cookbooks, the flour in Vermont. What's the name of the flour? King Arthur had a cookbook. So it's like, good, people like plant-based cookbooks. So it's been really, really fun for me.
Well done to you. And
Thank you. So if you don't know Plant City, it's in Providence, Rhode Island, which is close to Jean and close to me here in Boston. And it's amazing. Totally plant-based. There's like 4 restaurant establishments within it and a marketplace where you can pick up these great plant-based cheeses. It's really, really special. So that's nice. And I know you have my cookbook, Jean. On one of these pages, I show you how to put together a charcuterie board, like a step-by-step to make it like, I'm sure you have great talent in doing it too, but just in case you want to help, I have a step-by-step 4 steps to building your own beautiful appetizer platter.
all right.
Just to give you some ideas, like put some hummus in there, fruit, some crudité, some crackers. People will be in heaven.
These burgers, can they be frozen?
Oh yeah, thank you. Absolutely. They freeze really well.
Excellent. Excellent.
I do that frequently.
Well, let's go back to you. Were you up against any health issues, or you just said, today's the day I'm going plant-based, I'm doing it?
Yeah, so it was definitely today's the day I'm going plant-based, I'm doing it. And I told you that was 11 years ago. But I want to say like 25 years ago was diagnosed with melanoma. So the dermatologist removed a mole from my leg and she called me and she said that was melanoma. That's the bad news. The good news is it was caught so early that the biopsy itself is the cure. But it felt uncomfortable to me that that's all I was going to do. So I actually went and had surgery to take a 3-inch margin around it as well, which was completely clear. And I asked the doctors at the time, is there anything I should do to prevent reoccurrence? And they said, no, just stay out of the sun as much as you can and make sure you use sun protection. And that was the end of it. And they sent me on my way. Also, get annual checkups, which I have done since. Every year I go for a checkup, and they still frequently take things off of me, but there's never been any recurrence. But what I did learn after I went plant-based, as I mentioned, that plant-based foods tend to be high in dietary fiber, high in antioxidants, phytonutrients, relatively low in saturated fat. And all of these are the components of a disease risk minimizing diet. And that includes certain forms of cancer and maybe melanoma as well. So certainly, I don't think I think that's an added benefit that comes from eating this diet. So not only is it one of the single most impactful things we can do for the health of the planet, not only is it kinder to animals, it also may provide us with, insurance against some of these afflictions that are so common.
I just want to share with you too, especially sunscreen, because, living on the Cape in the summertime, we tend to coat ourselves in sunscreen. And I just want to point out, most of them are extremely toxic to you. And so if you've not heard of Pure Haven, I just put it in the chat. Just an FYI, the daughter of the people who started Plant City in Providence, the daughter started Pure Haven when she was
Oh,
15 years old.
oh, I knew she started a non-toxic cosmetic company.
Yep.
Can you still get those products?
You can, and I just put it in the
Oh,
chat there. It's purehaven.com, and they
okay.
all the products there, and they've got an amazing sunscreen. They've got some one especially for your face because my skin is very, very sensitive. And so I
Mm.
use the facial cream for the sun and the other cream for my body. But because, and I could use both, but I just like the gentleness of the facial cream. So they've got amazing products that meet my standard. I'm a former chemistry teacher and I taught environmental science for, I don't know, almost 40 years. And so I'm very, very, that is my passion is these environmental toxins. I think of the living plant-based as a trifecta. You have to change what goes in. So that's food and drink, which is what we're working on today. And then you have to change what goes on. So the personal care products and the environmental toxins, in shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste, things like that, sunscreens, you have to be aware of these things. I mean, I can't even go down the aisle anymore in the grocery store where they have all those so toxic products, laundry detergent and things like that, cleaning products. It's so toxic to me. By the end of the aisle, I will have a headache from just going down that aisle.
Really? Do
Yeah.
you have a list of products that you recommend as a good
Well,
alternative?
so Pure Haven, they have cleaning products, they have personal care products, they have skin, they have baby, they have dog, they have pet, they have pretty much everything covered. But I will say this, there's an app called Yuka, Yuka. And this Yuka, I love this app on your cell phone. You're in the grocery store, you scan the barcode, and if it's in their database, they have an analysis. They score it on a scale of 1 to 100. And not only do they tell you what the score is, but they tell you what's wrong with it. Okay, what are the issues? Pure Haven ranks up very, very high. The baby shampoo and was 100 out of 100. But it's not only personal care products, it's food. Like Skittles was a 0 out of 100.
And by the way, we're both former chemistry teachers.
That's right. I remember that now. Yes. So it's chemistry has been always been my passion. It really has, and especially the environmental toxins. I mean, I think when Love Canal came around and, that one really, really hit me hard because I grew up thinking that if it's on the shelf somewhere along the line, that it's okay for you, that somebody said, yeah, this is okay for humans. Yeah, no, there is no regulation in this country.
Yeah,
Zero.
we're not so good about it at all.
Did you just go overnight? Did you have cravings? How did you handle that in the beginning?
Yeah. So I did go overnight. I did definitely go overnight. I thought I'm going to have trouble living without cheese, but I'll figure it out. And I did find that two things. One, somehow hummus hits the same spot as cheese for me. So that was one thing. And the other thing was I started like researching how can I make plant-based cheeses and discovered nutritional yeast and like kind of felt like that hit the cheesy spot for me. And then you could replicate the texture in other ways. So I did get over that cheese craving pretty quickly. And interestingly, because I had this approach, like this insta vegan experience, I got really curious whether others might watch Earthlings, do what I did and then have an easy time making habit change. So I did a little bit of research on this concept of habit change, and I interviewed or surveyed almost 1,000 people, and they were people who aspire to eat plant-based, people who currently ate plant-based, and people who once did and no longer do. And I was trying to establish what it is that prevents people from making change and sticking with it. And so the people who aspire to eat plant-based, if I ask them what it is that is keeping them from making the change, very frequently they mention living without dairy. But interestingly, when I spoke to people who were currently eating plant-based or who once did, they didn't mention the challenge as being dairy. And this was quite a while ago, and certainly the non-dairy food industry is exploding. So there's many, many, many great options now. What people told me was the hardest and what derailed the most people was everything related to socializing. So that's what I found was the challenging area. So it was things like I want to be vegan, but my family's not. Or what do I do when I go out to eat? Or this is really difficult when, hi, Lisa, that's how I met you. I'm just seeing that now. You might have written that earlier. And so it's all sort of the socializing part, which is really, really challenging for some people. So how do you get over that? I actually wrote about this in my book, and I give a lot of tips on how to overcome this challenge. But certainly I would say, Jean, I have to applaud you because one of the most important things is creating community and finding good information. So that is most definitely one thing with, your plant-based group. Like it's a really great service. And then the other thing is like really preparing yourself for social situations to just make them easier for you. And again, I list a whole bunch of ways to do that. And then the third thing is really remembering your why you're doing it. So remember, like every day you have an opportunity to do something beneficial for the planet. Every day you have an opportunity to do something beneficial for animals, and certainly every day you have an opportunity to do something beneficial for your long-term health.
PCRM has taken over from Plant Pure Nation what they called the pod groups, called Building Healthy Communities. And I put in the chat the maps. So you can go on there and click on wherever you are in the country, and there are around the world too. If there are groups in your neighborhood, like we have Plant-Based Cape Cod, and we're frequently doing things here on the Cape. So PCRM has taken it over and they've done a phenomenal job of pulling it all together, updating it, finding out who's who, is it still going, is it working, is it, what's going on. They've got great Facebook group, so that you can connect. And so they've got the map so you can find out any place in the country. PCRM is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, if you don't know what that is, by Dr. Neil Barnard. And I just want to put a shout out to Dr. Barnard because he is the backbone for all of this. He's written so many books. I think the last four, I've done deep dives of interviews on them, which you can find on my YouTube channel. There's well over 400 videos. He's amazing. And we deep dived. I broke his book apart into like 5, 6, 8-part series, and we dove deep.
I love him.
Amazing.
And by the way, did you notice he wrote the cover quote for my book?
Yes.
Yeah. Plans for You is a treasury of wonderful recipes, practical tips for making the transition to a truly healthful and compassionate diet a breeze. So not only does he write all these books, but he goes and he writes blurbs for other people's books too. Very nice.
He is amazing, and I can't say enough about him. So,
Yeah.
Diana, thank you so much. I wish I could be there. I could smell those burgers like right through the Zoom, I think.
Thanks so much for having me. And I just want to say to anyone that's on that if you happen to be interested in ordering my book, people are loving the book as gifts. I've got some books where if you were to order them from my website, you put in the note who you want them written to, I'd be happy to personalize it with a special note written to someone you want to send it to as a gift. So I'm doing that now for the holiday season. And thank you, Jean, so much. It's really nice to see you. And thanks everybody else for joining.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And Diana's going to be coming back in February to the plant-based community. You'll see I'll be posting an event there. So do keep checking under events. There's a lot of some amazing people. We've got Dr. Clapper coming up and just all kinds of wonderful people. So keep connecting in the Academy. And thank you so much, Diana. And thank you everybody else for joining us tonight.